Kyle Harper stepped off the transport shuttle and looked at the dark green forest in the distance. The wind carried strange smells he had never encountered before, sweet and bitter at the same time. Behind him, Research Station Omega hummed with activity as scientists and workers moved equipment around. "That's the wild zone," a voice said beside him. Kyle turned to see a tall man in a military uniform. The man had gray hair and tired eyes. "Commander Barrett," the man said, offering his hand. "Welcome to Verdania Prime. I wish you had picked an easier assignment." Kyle shook his hand. "I've worked in dangerous places before. Earth's Amazon, the Arctic wastelands, even the deep ocean trenches." Barrett smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "This is different. The wild zone doesn't follow normal rules. Come inside. I'll show you what we know." Inside the station's main briefing room, Kyle met the rest of the team. Lisa Torres was a botanist with sharp features and careful movements. She had been studying the zone's plant life from a safe distance for 3 years. Greg Walsh was the security officer, a quiet man who watched everything with alert eyes. "We've sent 17 expeditions into that forest," Barrett began, pulling up a holographic map. 17 teams, different species from across the galaxy, humans, Zentari warriors, Krell scouts, every single one vanished. "Vanished?" Kyle asked. "No bodies? No signals?" Lisa Torres stepped forward. "Nothing. Their equipment stops working within minutes of crossing the boundary. Communication dies first, then tracking devices, then everything else. It's like the zone swallows them whole." She brought up footage from previous attempts. Kyle watched teams of armored soldiers marching into the forest with confidence. Their cameras showed dense vegetation, strange animal calls, and then static. Every recording ended the same way. "The Galactic Council declared it a forbidden zone 5 years ago," Greg Walsh added. "They say it's too dangerous. Whatever is in there, it's killed some of the best survival experts in known space." Kyle studied the map carefully. The wild zone covered nearly 40% of the planet's largest continent. It was massive, and the forest looked thick and old. Very old. "What makes you think it's different from just a dangerous ecosystem?" Kyle asked. Lisa pulled up more data. "Because it behaves with intelligence. Watch this." She showed aerial footage from different years. The forest's edge changed position. Sometimes it grew forward by several miles. Sometimes it pulled back. But the changes showed patterns. "When mining operations set up too close, the forest expanded toward them," Lisa explained. "Plants grew faster than should be possible. Animals became aggressive in coordinated ways. The mining teams had to abandon their equipment. When they moved away, the forest returned to its normal boundary." "It's protecting itself," Kyle said. "Exactly," Barrett confirmed. "But there's more. The creatures inside coordinate across massive distances. We've observed predators on opposite sides of the zone acting in synchronized patterns. Plants seem to communicate. The whole ecosystem acts like a single organism." Kyle felt excitement rise in his chest. This was why he had come to Verdania Prime. His whole career had been about understanding how life adapted to extreme conditions. If the wild zone truly had collective intelligence, it would be the most important discovery in human history. "I want to go in," Kyle said. The room fell silent. "You understand what that means?" Barrett asked slowly. "We can't rescue you. Our equipment doesn't work in there. If something goes wrong, you're on your own." "I understand." Lisa Torres looked concerned. The others who went in were trained soldiers. They had weapons, armor, the best technology available. It didn't help them. "Maybe that was the problem," Kyle said. He had been thinking about this since he first heard about the wild zone. "Every expedition went in ready for war. They brought weapons and treated it like an enemy to conquer. What if the zone responds to how you approach it?" Greg Walsh frowned. You think it's testing people? I think it's defending itself from threats, Kyle replied. An ecosystem this old and complex didn't survive by accident. Maybe it learned to recognize danger. Barrett considered this. So you want to go in alone, unarmed, and hope it doesn't see you as a threat? Yes. The commander looked at Lisa and Greg. They both seemed uncertain, but didn't object. I'll submit your request to the council, Barrett finally said. But Kyle, I have to be honest. I don't think you're coming back. 3 days later, Kyle stood at the Wild Zone's border. The council had approved his mission with strict conditions, 48 hours maximum. No rescue attempts. He carried only basic supplies, water, nutrition bars, a medical kit, and a recording device that probably would not work. Lisa Torres walked with him to the boundary line. This is crazy, she said. You know that, right? Probably, Kyle admitted, but every breakthrough looks crazy before someone does it. She handed him an emergency beacon. This won't work inside, but if you make it back to the edge, trigger it. We'll be watching. Kyle took the device and clipped it to his belt. He looked at the forest ahead. The trees were taller than any he had seen on Earth, with purple bark and leaves that seemed to shimmer in the light. Strange bird calls echoed from deep within. The air smelled of growing things and rich soil. Here's something to remember, Kyle said. On Earth we have a saying. The forest doesn't care if you're strong or weak. It only cares if you respect it. Lisa smiled sadly. Let's hope alien forests feel the same way. Kyle took a deep breath and stepped across the boundary. The change was immediate. His communicator crackled and died. The tracking device on his wrist went dark. Even the small computer in his pack shut down. He was alone with just his natural senses and his training. The forest around him seemed to pause. Birds stopped singing. The wind died down. Kyle felt like he had walked onto a stage and the audience was waiting to see what he would do. He did not pull out a weapon. He did not march forward with aggression. Instead, Kyle stood still and looked around slowly. He was a guest here. This was not his territory. After a long moment, the forest resumed its sounds. Birds called again. Leaves rustled. Small creatures moved in the undergrowth. Kyle smiled. That was a good sign. The zone was allowing him to stay. He began walking deeper into the forest, moving carefully and watching everything. He touched nothing without cause. He made no loud noises. He treated the zone the way he had treated every wilderness on Earth, with respect and careful attention. As the sun began to set, Kyle found a small clearing near a stream. He set up a simple Kyle woke to find himself surrounded. He opened his eyes slowly, keeping his breathing calm. Morning light filtered through the trees above. The glowing insects from last night were gone, but all around his small camp, animals sat in a perfect circle. Large predators with 4 legs and scales instead of fur. Flying creatures with 6 wings perched in the branches. Small mammals that looked almost like Earth's rabbits but with crystalline eyes. None of them moved toward him. They simply watched. Kyle sat up carefully. The animals did not react. Their attention remained fixed on him, but not with hunger. It was observation, study, like scientists watching an experiment. He stood and packed his gear slowly. The animals maintained their positions. When Kyle shouldered his pack and began walking, they scattered into the forest. Within seconds, he was alone again. But he could feel their presence nearby. They had not left. They were following. The first challenge came an hour later. Kyle reached a ravine with a stream at the bottom. A rope bridge stretched across it. The bridge looked old but sturdy, but when Kyle stepped onto it, the ropes snapped. He barely grabbed the edge as the entire structure collapsed into the water below. Kyle pulled himself back onto solid ground and looked at the broken ropes. They had not frayed naturally. The cuts were too clean. Something had severed them at the exact moment of his weight. The zone was testing him. Kyle looked around. The ravine was about 30 feet across, too far to jump. The walls were steep, but not impossible. He could see handholds and ledges. Climbing was possible, but risky. Then he noticed something. Vines hung from trees on both sides of the ravine. They were thick and strong. Kyle examined one carefully. It could support his weight. He tested it with half his body weight first. It held. He tied his pack to one end and used another vine to lower it across the ravine. Then he fashioned a simple harness with a third vine. It took 20 minutes of careful work. When he finally swung across, he felt dozens of eyes watching from the shadows. The second test came before noon. Kyle entered a grove where the trees grew so close together that walking between them was impossible. The only path forward was through a tunnel of thorny bushes. The thorns were long and sharp, coated with something that glistened in the light. Probably poison. But above the tunnel, branches formed a network. They were thin and would bend under his weight, but they connected the trees. Kyle could climb over instead of going through. He took his time, testing each branch before putting his weight on it, moving slowly from tree to tree. The branches bent and swayed, but they held. When he reached the other side and climbed down, he saw movement in his peripheral vision. The animals were still watching. By afternoon, Kyle understood. The wild zone was not trying to kill him. It was presenting obstacles and watching how he solved them. Every challenge tested something different. The ravine had tested his problem-solving and patience. The thorn tunnel had tested his observation and caution. The third test was different. Kyle found himself facing a pack of predators. 6 of them, each as large as an earth tiger, with black scales and yellow eyes. They formed a semicircle around him, blocking his path forward. Their teeth were visible, and they made low growling sounds. Kyle's heart raced, but he forced himself to think clearly. These predators had been near his camp last night. They could have killed him while he slept. They did not because they were not hunting. This was another test. But what was being tested now? Kyle looked at the predators carefully. Their body language was aggressive, but not attacking. They were waiting for something, a reaction. What would a person who came to conquer do? They would draw a weapon. They would show aggression. They would try to dominate the situation. Kyle did the opposite. He slowly lowered himself to sit on the ground. He made himself smaller, less threatening. He avoided direct eye contact, which many predators saw as a challenge. Instead, he looked to the side, acknowledging their presence without confronting them. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly, though he knew they could not understand words. "I'm just passing through." The predators looked at each other. One of them took a step forward and sniffed the air. Kyle remained still. His muscles tensed, ready to move if needed, but he showed no aggression. After a long moment, the largest predator made a huffing sound. The pack turned and walked away, leaving the path clear. Kyle waited several minutes before standing. His hands were shaking from the adrenaline, but he had passed the test. The fourth test came as the sun began setting on his second day. Kyle found himself lost. The forest all looked the same in every direction. His sense of direction, normally reliable, failed him completely. He could be walking in circles and never know. Previous explorers would have pushed forward, trying to force their way to a destination. But Kyle stopped and observed. He watched how the shadows fell. He noticed which side of the trees had more moss. He looked at the way the branches bent, shaped by prevailing winds. Then he sat and waited.